Thanks so much, Chairwoman Klobuchar. I think today's hearing is important. I look forward to it for a variety of reasons. I think it'll be illustrative on a number of fronts. The first involves what ails the news industry. Now, news publishers do, in fact, have a legitimate beef with the Google, Facebook ad duopoly. That's a problem. And Google and Facebook's unrivaled market power in digital advertising imposes a sort of de facto tax on every business that places or makes money from ads, which is a large swath of the 21st century economy. And I'm grateful to you, Madam Chair, along with Senators Grassley and Blumenthal, for working with me in my office to help tackle that two-headed hydra, which does need to be tackled. And we have a lot of agreement on that issue. I also think that it's important to ask the question whether that's really news publishers' only problem. I don't think it is. In fact, I think it's far from that. Now, our witnesses today may not exemplify it. I'll assume for purposes of our discussion today that they don't. But there are a number of voices within the mainstream news media whose publications are rife with shoddy and extraordinarily biased reporting that many consumers simply don't trust, or in any event don't want to spend money consuming. There are too many examples to cite all of them, but I think it's important to point out at least a few of them. You have the Steele dossier, a work of pure fiction, funded by the Clinton campaign and breathlessly, dutifully reported on by news media outlets across the country. Blinded by their own impassioned hatred of President Trump, they helped spread the dossier's lies, even after it had been proven demonstrably, literally false. We're still waiting on the retractions. Or what about the Washington Post defamation of Covington Catholic High School student Nicholas Sandmann? Or the Post's fawning description of Islamic State leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi as a quote-unquote austere religious scholar? And who can forget the New York Times reporting that Russia had placed bounties on the heads of American soldiers, which was quickly, dutifully parroted by other outlets in the run-up to the 2020 presidential election. It wasn't until after President Biden was inaugurated that they felt comfortable admitting that the story didn't hold up. Mission accomplished, I suppose. I know Senator Cotton will recall how his suggestion that COVID-19 may have been leaked from a lab in Wuhan was scoffed at and derided rather viciously in a series of personal attacks against him for saying that. And as it turns out, he was right. So how did the media respond? Well, they stealth edited their original reporting to pretend that it never happened. And just last month, just in the last few weeks, the Salt Lake Tribune's editorial board literally said that if Utah were a more just, decent place, that the National Guard would be mobilized to, in effect, hold people under house arrest orders if they were unvaccinated. So the fiery but mostly peaceful protests of the summer of 2020, the denials that critical race theory is being taught in the schools, these things add to and constitute part of this list, along with quote-unquote temporary inflation, and the list goes on and on. But look, today's news media is often a source of misinformation. And it's one of the leading causes, when it does this, of social discord and political upheaval, especially when it doesn't even acknowledge its mistakes, and especially when its mistakes appear so frequently, so consistently, so constantly to lean one direction and not the other. The self-proclaimed Fourth Estate loves to preach to the masses about democracy dying in darkness while they themselves turn out the lights. On top of the fact that the mainstream media is selling something that in many cases people don't want, there are also the series of poor business decisions that have been made within that industry. During the years in which they made comfortable profits, almost nothing, in some of the companies at least, was reinvested into the business to innovate and to grow in response to changing technologies. And when the market changed with the advent of the internet, forcing newspapers for the first time to face meaningful competition for advertising dollars, many publishers just went all in on an advertising-only business model, even abandoning subscription revenue for online content. The bottom line here is that whatever the challenges that the news publishers are facing as a result of big tech's dominance over digital advertising, for some publishers, perhaps for many, they've got other problems. And for some of them, perhaps for many, it may involve inferior product quality and failure to take into account evolving technologies to adapt their business model. The second thing to set straight here is that what we should do about this, or rather what we should not do, also matters. The last thing I think we should do is to try to solve this or any other competition problem by saying that it's okay to just accept a cartel, that it's okay to make changes to the laws to encourage the formation and allow the formation and thereby encourage the formation of a cartel, as many publishers are requesting. And make no mistake, that is what this is. That is what this call is for. And that is what the JCPA would do. We're not talking about an arguably pro-competitive type of competitor collaboration on some sort of run-of-the-mill joint venture. This would be competitors themselves colluding with the approval of law against a common business partner in order to fix problems that they're facing. Now, there is a lot that Senator Klobuchar and I have agreed on, and one of the many things that we've agreed also a lot on a lot of areas within antitrust law. We held a fantastic hearing back in 2013, I think it was, when we talked about cartels, and Senator Klobuchar said cartels have no other purpose other than to rob consumers. And I agree. And I certainly think that we're not going to be better off by giving a cartel formation hall pass to an industry that's been ravaged by a number of other problems that I've identified. This ends up passing those problems along to consumers, the very same consumers that are being forced to, in many cases, accept an inferior product and partisan hackery and so much else that goes along with it. Now, I know publishers, including some of our witnesses today, believe that they would benefit, but legislation like the Journalism Competition and Preservation Act would do far more to help the New York Times and far more to help the Washington Post than it would be a benefit for local journalism in Salt Lake City or in Minneapolis. The only way to fix this is by encouraging competition and allowing it and promoting it, not eliminating it, and certainly not giving people a hall pass to engage in contact that would challenge, threaten, and undermine it. And finally, as I understand, the authors of the JCPA are rewriting that bill in an effort to mirror some reforms in Australia and the music licensing system in the United States. But I want to register my frustration that the majority hasn't shared draft text with it. We haven't seen that draft text. It's nearly impossible for senators and witnesses to prepare for a hearing where the draft of the legislative solution is still floating. It's floating apparently around K Street, but not publicly available for senators and for the American people, for that matter, to review. So with all that said, I look forward to this hearing and hearing from our witnesses and their contributions.